Australia is known for moving very quickly with its numbers, and it certainly looks like some people across Australia have even called this election already. And no surprise, the polls had shown this was going to be a wipeout for the Labor government, and that seems to be what we're seeing at this point.
Indeed it is, Rosemary. If you look at the numbers here, and politics is always ultimately about numbers, there are 150 seats in the House of Representatives here. You need to have 76 to form a majority government. It looks as though the Liberal National Party coalition will have way above that. They're projecting, according to the early indicators from the various seats around the country and the exit polls, that they're going to have well into the 90-plus seats. That's a significant loss for the Labor Party. They're going to lose at least 20 seats. So that really does underline just how unpopular the party has become in recent years. Now, already the Labor Party is blaming this on the disunity within the party itself. And for this, you need to look at what has transpired here in recent years, Rosemary. Remember back to 2010, when Kevin Rudd was then Prime Minister. He was ousted by Julia Gillard. Julia Gillard then ruled until 2013, just a few months ago, and Kevin Rudd made a return and ousted Julia Gillard. There was a little bump in the polls there for a while. People seemed to be coming back to have another look at the Labor Party, but it didn't last very long. Going into this campaign, they were trailing behind in the opinion polls, and those numbers have only increased as the campaign has continued. Tony Abbott, the Liberal Party leader, is not the most popular figure, but all he had to do throughout this campaign was to run a very safe campaign, make himself a very small target, and make the election ultimately about the disunity on the Labor side. That has worked for him, and already, as you say, a lot of television networks here across Australia referring to Tony Abbott, in fact, as the new Prime Minister.
Yeah, and the Labor government really only has itself to blame, doesn't it? You talk about the divisions and the infighting there. When you look at the policies, I mean, they really had done a pretty good job as far as protecting, shielding the country from the global financial crisis, the rest of the world feeling the recession. But not so much in Australia. The economy was pretty good. But in the end, the voters turned their back on that. Pretty astounding when you consider their list of achievements versus their disunity and the divisions.
Isn't it extraordinary? Australia has had 22 years of uninterrupted economic growth. Very few places on the planet could lay claim to that sort of achievement. If you go back to the 1997 Asian financial crisis, Australia withstood that. If you look at the global financial crisis, where the United States, where Europe all slid into recession, from which they're only starting to struggle to come back from now, Australia managed to ride that out. Australia has kept unemployment relatively low, around about 5 to 6%, while at the same time we've seen double-digit unemployment. In fact, unemployment as high as 30 or 40% in some parts of Europe. Now, a lot of that has been down to the strength of the Chinese economy. Australia, as you know, is a big resource-rich country, and there is such a hunger for Australian resources from China, and that's been the bedrock of the Australian economy. Some of the concerns now, though, are that the Chinese economy is starting to slow, and that ultimately is going to have an impact here. Kevin Rudd, indeed Tony Abbott as well, went on record as warning coming into this election campaign that the mining boom is over. China cannot just continue to underwrite the strength of the Australian economy. Tony Abbott has made a point of saying that the Rudd government, the Labor Party, have borrowed against Australia's future, and that's seen an increase in the budget deficit here. One of the aims of Tony Abbott is to pay down that debt and try to bring the country back into the black as they enter a period where there is no doubt we're going to see a contraction in the overall economy. That was also a figure here. People looked at the disunity on the Labor side, looked at the projections for a slowdown in the economy, and made a decision that they thought right now, given the two states of the parties and what may be expected in the future, that a more safer option would be to look for a new government.